Okay, hello and welcome to this screencast, which is all about how you might answer question 2 on the iGCSE reading paper. That's the extended paper. Now, first of all, let's have a look at an example of question 2. This is the one from June 2012. And I'd encourage you, if you're listening to this and watching this screencast, to have a past paper in front of you that you can think about whilst you're watching this video. It doesn't have to be the one from June 2012, but having a paper in front of you would be useful. Now, every time you are asked this question, you will be asked to look at specifically 2 paragraphs from passage A. You'll notice that in June 2012, you're being asked to read the descriptions of the appearance of the cloud and the atmosphere in paragraph 4, and the rain and the wind in paragraph 7. Now, if I were doing this paper, just for peace of mind, I'd probably circle or highlight the precise paragraphs I'm being asked to write about. It is not unheard of for students to answer this question and mistakenly write about completely the wrong paragraph, and obviously that means they won't be getting any marks. So, every time, let me just go back to that. Every time you are being asked this question, you will be asked to select words and phrases from the descriptions of these paragraphs and explain how the writer has created effects by using language. That is the question you'll always be asked to do, obviously focused on those 2 paragraphs. You should aim to write about a page or a detailed paragraph for part A and a detailed paragraph for part B. If you write a page for part A and only a couple of lines for part B, you're not going to be able to access the top marks because your 2 parts of this question must be balanced. So, before I talk you through a method about how to answer this question, I want you to have a look at the mark scheme. So you can read that now. I would pause the video and just make sure you've fully looked at that. Okay, for me there are 4 main things that I think are really important when we look at this mark scheme. Firstly, the idea about adding meanings and associations to words. Now, this is asking you to make sure that you comment on individual words. It might not be enough to take longer quotes out of the paragraph without actually breaking it down and picking out words. We know that words have literal meanings, the meanings that might be our day-to-day meanings, but they're also huge layers and associations beneath words that we should be looking at. So make sure when you're picking words from the paragraphs in your question, you're picking ones that are unusual, ones that leap out at you, ones that have loads of connotations that you could discuss. Secondly, the idea about showing the writer's reasons for using words. This means you're probably going to be saying things like, the writer has used this word because, or the writer uses this simile, metaphor because, really showing you that you're aware of the writer's craft and the reasons they have for picking certain words. Okay, grouping examples together to demonstrate an overview I feel is really important and is really useful for answering this question, and we're going to look at that in detail in just a moment. And lastly, the idea of tackling images. So to get in the top marks, you must tackle images and you must be precise about how you tackle images. That means you're going to probably, if there are metaphors or there is personification or similes in this paragraph, you're probably going to try and comment on them. And remember, these passages are written specifically for the exam, so there is probably going to be things like metaphor and personification in these paragraphs, and you need to be aware of that and you need to be confident to talk about those. Okay, so let's have a look at this together. This is paragraph 4 from the June 2012 paper, which is part A of question 2. Now, I want you to read that, but it also might be a good idea to pause and think about your own example and your own paragraph from the paper you have in front of you right now. And what I believe is a good first step when we're answering question 2 is to think about what we might say are the main effects being created from that paragraph, and what overview could we give from the paragraph so that we're really hitting the top marks of the mark scheme. Now, I've said there, and it's in italics, including any changes or contrasts. What you'll notice a lot of the time with these questions is that it's not just the same effects all the way through, and that often there's a contrast for you. Now, You've read this paragraph here. What do you think the main effects are? What contrasts are there? Is there anything unusual about this paragraph? Now, for me, I would say that the main effect being created is probably the idea that the storm is really aggressive, really evil, and can cause a lot of damage. And I think there's also the idea that it is going to cause this damage. The damage is inevitable. But as well as that, there's a contrast. And that contrast is probably the idea that Adam really enjoys this storm, Adam, the character in the passage, and he actually feels that it's quite fascinating or intriguing. Now, have a look at your paragraph. What contrast do you notice in it? And think about how you're going to write your opening sentence of part A to question 2, where you show this overview. Now, I think it's a good idea to think about those 4 phrases at the bottom of the page here. Even though, at first glance, despite, and although. If you're using those words, or obviously not all of them, but one of them to start your paragraph, it's going to help you show a contrast in your thinking. And here's how I think I might write my opening sentence to this particular question here. Even though the writer presents the storm as incredibly dangerous and violent, the writer also makes it clear that the storm fascinates and intrigues Adam. Now, I'm giving a clear overview there. I'm showing I know the contrast. The 2 underlined sections show that those are the 2 main effects being created. And also notice the language I'm using. The writer presents the storm. The writer makes it clear. I'm showing that I understand that this is a deliberate thing that the writer has chosen to do. And these effects being created are part of the writer's craft. So that is my step 1. That is the first sentence I would write if I was completing this question. Pause the video. Have a go at writing your own sentence either on the June 2012 paper or maybe on the paper you've got in front of you. Okay. The next step for me is going to be to identify the best evidence to prove your argument. I use the word argument because I think once you've got your overview, it gives you a good structure for your paragraph, and you can keep linking back to it. I've said the storm's dangerous, so I need to pick the best evidence to prove it's dangerous. In the second half of my paragraph, I need to pick the best evidence which shows that Adam is fascinated or intrigued by the storm, even though it is dangerous. And I think what I need to make sure I'm doing as well is tackling images and finding words which are unusual or give lots of associations or meanings. So, there's loads in there. There's almost too much. I can't comment on it all, so I'm going to look specifically at this sentence here. It has no anger yet, but is full of menace, as if it is waiting to roll steadily ashore. So, for me, there's plenty in there to talk about. I can talk about images. I can talk about the personification and how the storm seems to be brought to life as if it were human. I can talk about menace as an interesting word. It's threatening. It suggests it's going to cause some damage. And I think those words yet and the word and waiting are really interesting because no anger yet kind of says to me, well, it's not angry at the moment, but it is going to turn angry at any second. It's waiting to roll ashore. It's waiting to become angry. So those are the words I'm going to discuss. And now it's time for step 3. I've got my overview, I've got my evidence, and now I'm going to analyze this evidence and explain how it proves my initial overview. And this is how I've done it. I'm going to read you the paragraph and talk you through as I go through some of the things I've tried to do. So at the bit in bold at the top is my overview, which you'll recognize from earlier. I'm hoping at this point that you might read this and then try and have a go at your own paragraph for your own question. So one of the ways the writer makes the storm seem dangerous is through personification. Notice straight away I'm tackling those images. The phrase, "it has no anger yet," makes the storm seem human, capable of human anger. The personification continues when the clouds are described as full of menace. So I'm tackling those images straight away. I'm showing that I understand personification, the way that this storm, which obviously isn't human, is almost brought to life. Specifically, the word menace gives the storm a threatening, dangerous persona. I'm showing I understand that word. I'm showing the idea that it is associated with a threat and with danger. Also, the word yet indicates that the clouds almost certainly will become angry soon after. When the word yet is coupled with the word waiting, the reader is left with the impression that the storm will certainly cause damage and that the threat is inevitable. Again, I've tried to explore the individual words there, and I'm showing my overview is correct. I'm talking about danger and how it is a danger that is inevitable and that it has the personification makes it sound dangerous. I'm talking about individual words. I'm tackling those images, and finally, I think you can notice that my quotes are embedded. The reason this is quite a concise paragraph so far, isn't too many words, is that the quotes I'm using, I'm integrating as part of my own writing. When the word yet is coupled with the word waiting, I've given 2 quotes of individual words there, but they're part of my paragraph. I haven't wasted lots of words saying something clumsy like, for example, the word yet, and for example, the word waiting. Okay, now I need to repeat this step again for the final part of my overview. I need to be able to pick the best evidence which shows that even though the storm is dangerous, Adam still really enjoys it. And I think I'm going to get it from this final sentence here. And what I think I've got there is another image to explore, the metaphor describing nature as a great canvas, almost as if it's a painting, and the word awakens, which I think brings life to Adam. You'll have to excuse my typo there with K. Obviously, I mean, it brings life to Adam there. So, here's my full paragraph. You'll notice the bit in bold is my overview. The bit in the middle, which isn't in bold, is what I read to you on the previous couple of slides. And finally, at the bottom, the writer states that the storm awakens his imagination, implying that the storm somehow brings life to Adam. Finally, the image of a painting is created by the metaphor great canvas of nature. Not only does this image make the storm seem in a way beautiful to Adam, it also suggests he feels helpless when faced with such beauty. Again, I'm showing that I feel that Adam is somehow fascinated by this storm. It brings life to him. He finds it beautiful. So I'm trying to link back to my overview, and I'm tackling images and I'm tackling individual words whilst making those quotes embedded into my paragraph. I'm not wasting any words there. Okay, so just to kind of recap what we've been talking about. Step 1, provide a clear overview. So read your paragraph. Make sure you know about the main effects the writer is trying to create, and that it might include a contrast or a change, and it often does. Step 2, identify the best evidence to prove your argument. So make sure that you can pick the best words to link back to your overview. Remember, you're not going to be able to comment on every word in that paragraph. You should be picking the most interesting phrases, the images, and the words to help prove your overview. And finally, analyze this evidence, explain it how it proves your overview. I've given you an example of how to do that. Hopefully you can read back over that and think about how you might analyze the evidence. Really, what we're doing there is bringing out the meanings and associations of words and being as precise as possible. So to finish off, I just want to give you 3 final tips, or 3 things to avoid when you're answering this question. Now, the first thing I want you to avoid is saying things like, this gives an effect on the reader, or this word is really effective, because for me it's not precise enough. As soon as you say this gives an effect on the reader, you've lost the chance to really say specifically what that effect is. So you're much better off exploring words specifically and saying what those words tell you. So instead of saying the word is really effective, because tell me what the associations that word conjures up. What is it about that word which gives you extra meanings and extra ideas? Paraphrasing. So make sure that you're explaining quotes, not just rewording them in your own language. The phrase "no anger yet" makes the storm sound like it isn't angry yet. Well, you're not going to get many marks for that. You're not proving you understand the language. You're simply putting it into your own words. And finally, don't confuse the writer with the characters. In passage A, there's always some sort of characters involved. In the example from June 2012, it is a diary told from the point of view of Adam. But that doesn't mean we should be saying things like, Adam makes the storm sound like this. Remember, it is the writer who's doing the work there. So we need to detach ourselves from the characters involved and make sure we're aware that it is the writer creating the effects. And that is it.